In a follow-up to our first video, here are some more formidable medieval knights who were not only trained in horsemanship, sword fighting and chivalry, but were also just really badass. El Cid. Rodrigo Diaz was born at a time when his birth country of Spain was deeply divided, not just between Muslims and Christians, but also between its kingdoms like those of Castile and Aragon, which would sometimes support Muslim rulers against one another. During his lifetime, Diaz fought for both Christian and Muslim armies, earning himself the Arabic nickname of As-Sayyad, or the Master, which evolved into the Spanish name El Cid. El Cid was born around 1043 into a noble Castilian family in Bivar, northern Spain. In 1057, when he was just 14 years old, he fought against the Moors in the Muslim stronghold of Zaragoza. 6 years later, he was fighting in the Battle of Grauls, and by the age of 22, he had been given the title of Commander of the Royal Troops by King Sancho II of Castile. When Sancho died childless, his brother took the Castilian throne, and El Cid was sent to the court of Al-Mutamid in Seville to collect tributes for his king. Whilst there, Seville was attacked, and El Cid defended his Muslim enemies and earned himself the name of Sayyidi. Now exiled, El Cid offered his fighting skills to the Muslim ruler of Zaragoza. He broke the siege of Almena Castle in 1082 and won the Battle of Morella in 1084. El Cid went back to the service of King Alfonso but was exiled again for disobedience, so he set out as an independent ruler in the region of Valencia. He captured the city of Valencia, consolidated power, and collected taxes, naming himself Prince Rodrigo el Campeador, meaning the champion. The city was populated by both Muslims and Christians, who served as his soldiers and administrators. El Cid died peacefully at the age of 55 in 1099, and his legend grew. Before we get into the rest of the video, we'd like to thank today's sponsor, War Thunder. We'd like to think that if you look at it in the right way, you could argue that a medieval knight is the tank of the Dark Ages. Maybe? Either way, it's interesting to see how some roles and tactics on the battlefield don't change all that much. Knights were the mobile, heavy-hitting forces that dominated the field, just like modern-day tanks. And War Thunder is a really fun, free-to-play multiplayer military action game, where you can explore all the similarities and differences of a knight and a tank, whether you want to play on your PC, PlayStation, Xbox, or even your Mac. Each instance involves dozens of military vehicles, either ground and air or naval and air. There are a huge range of locations and equipment from the 20th century to the modern day, so you can play in any way you want. War Thunder also updates regularly, with a massive update recently being released which includes a unique Flanders map that changes depending on what era you're playing in. If you have tanks from World War II, there'll be an airship and other stuff from that time, but if you choose a modern chopper, you'll be surrounded by modern trappings. One of the best things about the game is that it's stunningly detailed with a massive range of locations you can play in, as well as having immersive soundscapes and effects that make you really feel like you're there. Another impressive detail is the unique damage system where you can take out a single part of a vehicle, and it'll change how you can play with it. So if you puncture a fuel tank, kablamo! So download War Thunder for free by using the link in the description box. If you're new to playing or haven't played in over half a year, you'll get special bonuses including rentals for the P-40E1 aircraft and M4 tank for a week, along with free unique skins for them, a special decorator Eagle of Valor, 100,000 silver lions, 3 premium vehicles for free, a week of premium account, and even more gifts. Don't wait, the American vehicle bonus season will end soon. And now for today's video. Welcome to Medieval Madness. Edward the Black Prince. Edward was born in Woodstock Palace, Oxfordshire, England in 1330. He was the eldest son and heir of King Edward III. He was named the Prince of Wales at 13 and took part in his first military campaign in northern France at the age of 16 in the early days of the 100 Years' War, which began in 1337. On receiving his knighthood from his father just before the Battle of Crécy, the young prince was given command of the vanguard. He was in the thick of the fighting and was almost killed when he was knocked down, but saved by the intervention of 2 other knights. England was victorious at Crécy, and the teenager was admired for his bravery. Edward became known as a model knight who enjoyed a lifestyle of chivalric pastimes including hunting, jousting, and falconry, but he also gave generously to charitable causes. He took part in the battles of Calais and Winchelsea and led campaigns into Aquitaine as commander of the English army. But it was at the Battle of Poitiers in 1356 that he made his mark. It was there that Edward, who supposedly had the courage of a lion and took great delight that day in the fight, captured the French King John II. He treated the king with the greatest respect, helped the man to remove his armor, and served him food. He refused to sit at the king's table, stating that, quote, "He was not worthy to sit at a table with so great a king or so valiant a man." However, this didn't stop Prince Edward from demanding a huge ransom of 3 million gold crowns for his royal captive. He went on to negotiate a treaty and a preliminary truce with the French. No one seems to know how Edward received the nickname the Black Prince, and it was not used until the mid-16th century, although he was known to wear black armor in battle. He died in 1376 at the age of 45 from dysentery in London. Bertrand du Guesclin. Another knight who was active during the 100 Years' War, only this time on the side of the French, Bertrand was born in Brittany in 1320. He first served Charles de Blois in the Breton War of Succession and was knighted in 1354 after he thwarted a raid on the castle of Montmorin. 2 years later, he was successful in defending the city of Rennes against an English Breton siege. There, he was challenged to a duel by the English knight William Bamborough, whom he killed. He fought for the King of France in 1364 against Charles II of Navarre to save the Duchy of Burgundy and was victorious in a pitched battle. After successfully fighting against Pedro I of Castile, King Charles V called Bertrand home to make him Constable of France, the highest military honour in the land. After helping to regain much of France from the English, Bertrand died from illness whilst on a military expedition aged 60. He had fought in 7 battles and won 5 of those while in command. One story says he was in such a fury whilst fighting during one battle that he didn't even realise his army had surrendered. Bertrand was a loyal and disciplined warrior, which earned him the nickname the Eagle of Brittany. John II le Maingre. Born in 1366, Jean served as a page at the court of King Charles V of France and went on campaign with the Duke of Bourbon against Normandy when he was just 12. The evening before the Battle of Rysbeck, he was knighted by the Duke at the age of 16. In 1384, Jean went to Prussia to assist the Teutonic Order of Knights, a Catholic military society who were trying to convert the pagan Lithuanians to Catholicism. Over the next few years, Jean travelled to Spain to fight against the Moors and then to France to fight some battles in the 100 Years' War. He spent time in the Balkans, near East and the Holy Lands, where together with a group of friends he wrote the Book of 100 Ballads, a poetic work about a chivalric knight. After a bit of jousting in a tournament that he set up to embarrass some English knights, Jean went off to Prussia again and he was named Marshal of France by King Charles VI for his great service against the heathens. In 1396 he fought against the Ottomans in the French-Hungarian Crusade and founded the enterprise of the Green Shield and the White Lady to protect all female relatives of knights, including widows, when the men were off fighting. In 1401, Jean was appointed governor of Genoa, Italy, which had been captured by the French. Then he repelled an attack by the King of Cyprus, went to Lebanon and tried to capture Tripoli, burned and pillaged Botron, sacked Beirut, and eventually tried to take Alexandria in Egypt. That really puts my year to shame. It was Henry V and the Battle of Agincourt that proved to be his downfall, however. As commander of the defeated French vanguard, he was captured and taken to England as a prisoner, where he died 6 years later, aged 54. Hughes de Payens. Thought to have been born in Troyes in the Champagne-Ardenne region of northern France around 1119, not much else is known about Payens' early life, although he is thought to have fought in the First Crusade that started in 1096. Hugh, the Count of Champagne, went to the Holy Land on pilgrimage for 3 years in 1104 and again for 2 years in 1114, and it's thought that de Payens went with him. At that time, more and more Christians were going on pilgrimage to Jerusalem and other sacred sites, and often found themselves at the mercy of marauding bandits. Many pilgrims were killed. Because of this, in around 1118, de Payens and 8 other knights went to see the King of Jerusalem, Baldwin II. They wanted to establish a protective order that could escort the pilgrims safely on their righteous journeys, and so the Knights Templar was formed. De Payens served as the first Grand Master and led the order for nearly 20 years until his death. On visits to Scotland and England in 1128, he founded chapters in London and Edinburgh, raising money and men along the way. In 1139, Pope Innocent II granted the Templar Order exemption from taxes and decreed that they should have no other authority except that of the papacy. The order grew into a leading economic force. They became known as one of the most skilled military orders in the world, with a fleet of ships, a chain of banks, and chapters throughout Christendom. De Payens created the Latin Rule along with Bernard of Clairvaux, a 72-page document that outlined the specific behaviour for the Temple Order, and created the code of how an ideal knight should behave. In 1136, de Payens died, probably from old age, as he would have been in his late 60s by that point, and that's pretty good going for the Middle Ages. His death was commemorated by the Templars on the 24th of May each year. He had helped to lay down the foundations of an order that became one of the most popular and wealthiest in Western Christianity for over 200 years. Richard the Lionheart. The third son of King Henry II of England and Eleanor of Aquitaine, Richard was born in Beaumont Palace, Oxford in 1157, and was never expected to ascend to the throne. By the time of his death in 1189, he had ruled as King of England, Lord of Cyprus, Duke of Normandy, Gascony and Aquitaine, and Count of Maine, Anjou, Poitiers and Nantes. After Henry II fell ill in 1170, his eldest son Henry was crowned during his father's reign, but Henry the young king was frustrated that his father kept him short of money and refused to give him a kingdom of his own, so he rebelled. Young Henry went to the French court to seek protection, and Richard soon followed. By the time he was 16, Richard was already in command of his own army and honed his skills fighting alongside barons and earls in both England and France against his father's army. He was given the name the Lion, or the Lionheart, because of his noble, brave, and fierce leadership. After the death of his father and his older brother, Richard became King of England in 1189 and almost immediately took up the cross and went off on the Third Crusade. On his way to the Holy Land, Richard and his troops caught Messina in Sicily and conquered the island of Cyprus. He fought bravely against the forces of Sultan Saladin and helped in the capture of Acre despite suffering from a mysterious medieval illness known as Arnaldia, which almost killed him. On his return to the west, Richard subdued the English and reclaimed Normandy and Anjou from King Philippe of France. In 1199, Richard was in France suppressing a rebellion when he was hit in the shoulder by a crossbow bolt. The wound became gangrenous and Richard died in his mother's arms. His body was buried at his father's feet in Anjou, and his entrails were buried in Chalus where he died, and his heart was buried in Rouen, Normandy. This custom of dividing up the heart, bones and bowels of a knight or crusader after death was common, as so many of them died far away from home. Despite being described as a bad king, as he only spent about 6 months of his reign in England, Richard I is admired as a man of God and a brave crusader. During his lifetime, many stories and legends grew up around his achievements as a fearless knight. Richard was described by one historian as a peerless killing machine. Now that's a real medieval badass. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please do subscribe to the channel if you're enjoying it, and I'll see you next week for another one. Have a great week. Cheers.